Hi everyone, so today I'm going to show you how to make a perfect circle using t-shirt yarn. As always, I will be using the Amarino Fios 36mm t-shirt yarn. This color is pistachio. This is our golden yellow color, and you can find both of those on my website. And you can do all kinds of stuff with a simple circle. For instance, I made this little Santa holder using a circle. It just holds all of my little fasteners there. I've made my wine totes with my circle, using a circle. I've made bucket purses. You can do all kinds of stuff. You can make placemats. So knowing how to make a perfectly round circle without the bulk on the back is really helpful. So I hope you enjoy this tutorial. I'm going to be using a 5.5mm hook, which is what I try to use with all of my projects so I can stay consistent. So when you're working with t-shirt yarn, make sure you're paying attention to the tension, not being too tight, and yeah, just follow along, and if you have any questions, I'm here to help. Alright, so for this tutorial I am using our golden yellow color. And we're going to start with a magic ring or magic circle like we would with any other yarn. So I'll show you here quickly. I just leave a little tail. You can leave a longer one if you're more comfortable, but I just leave a little tail there. Grab with my thumb and my pinky, and I wrap it around my 3 fingers, crossing over on the palm side, and then securing it here, kind of like 2 railroad tracks. And then I take my hook and I go under the first loop and over the second loop, and I grab and twist. Okay, so now we've got our yarn twisted, and to secure it, we go underneath that back loop there and pull through. Okay, so that's just like we would with any other yarn, making our magic ring. And to make this perfect circle, I'm going to start with 6 single crochets. So as always, I've got my yarn with the seam side up on my finger, so that when I'm going in and grabbing that yarn, that nice clean side comes up each time. So that's our first single crochet, and when we pull through, you want to make sure that you've got a little bit of slack or wiggle room here on the yarn on your hook. So we're going to go in for our second, pull up a nice long loop. You want it in line. You want the working yarn that you're pulling up in line height-wise with the yarn on your hook. And then yarn over, pull through. So that's 2, again, 3, working over the tail as you go, 4, 5, and if you're running out of tail here, you can always pull it and tighten that circle a little bit, and 6. Okay, so now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 single crochets, and we're going to take this tail and we're going to give it a pull to bring them together, but we're not going to tighten it all the way just yet. It makes this first single crochet a little bit tight if we do it too soon. So we'll bring it together, and typically what we would do with traditional yarn is we would just slip stitch into this first single crochet, but that will make our project too bulky. So I will show you how to close the round seamlessly with t-shirt yarn. So you want to give this loop a little pull. So we want to have a little bit of slack here on this working loop, and we're going to go to this first single crochet. or this first stitch. And if you're having a hard time finding it, what I like to do is I like to count backwards from the last stitch. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So we're going to go take our hook from the back to the front, right under that top V there. Just like that. And we're going to take this loop that we created, hook it right on there, and pull through to the back. So now we have this sort of bridge that we've created. Now this bridge and this loop does not need to be as long as it is right now. So what I like to do each time is give this a little tug and then pull on this to shorten that loop, okay? So that we have just enough to cross over, keeping our stitches nice and tight, and we have enough of a loop that we can stick our hook in there in just a minute. So making this circle, we are not going to be working underneath. We're not going to be working under these top V's. What we're actually going to be doing is working in these front V's here. They're a little bit hard to see at first, but a good way to identify them is if you look for the head of this stitch and the base of this stitch where they come together, right there is where you're going to find we're going to go in. Again, the head of this stitch and the base of this stitch, right where they come together, right here is that V that we're going to go in. And you can also kind of push it out to see it a little better. So again, this is the head and the base, and right here is that V that we're going to go right inside. Okay, so now again we've got this bridge and this little loop. So to close out the round completely, what we want to do is we're going to actually start our first single crochet of the second round. So we want to find this first stitch here that we're going to go in, which is always just past that loop that we've created. So push your hook right in there. And if you watch out the back here, this first one's always a little tricky. So if you have a hard time with it, I do too. Just because everything's kind of tight here. So this is exactly where we want to come out at. So we're right in there, and let me just make sure you guys can see. Hopefully I wasn't out of view there. But this is the bump. We're going to be right below the bump, and we're going to be between these two seams there. Okay, so that's exactly where we want to be. We're going to grab our working yarn, yarn over, and pull a loop through. So right now we have this loop here and this loop that we created before. And what we're going to do is take this working yarn loop and then stick our hook right through that first one. And we're going to yarn over and pull through both. So what we just did is we just created our very first single crochet of round 2. Okay, and I know it's a little complicated. It's different from traditional yarn. This is how we're going to close the round each time. So as we do it again and again, it should become a little bit easier. So for round 2, just like any other, working in the round, any other yarn, we're going to do increases in each stitch. So this does count as our first single crochet. So we want to put a second one or an increase in that same stitch. So follow that first stitch right at the base there and just push your yarn or your hook through, and we come out right where we need to be. Yarn over, pull up a nice long loop there, pull through. So that is our first and second stitch of round 2. So we want to do increases all the way around. So again, if you're having a hard time finding your next stitch, just sort of give it a push, find the head and the base where they come together, and you'll see this V right here. And you want to just stick your hook right in there, push straight back, and we're right where we want to be, underneath that bump and between those two pieces of yarn. Sometimes it'll have you coming out right here, and you'll be sort of beside on either side of those pieces of yarn. But where we want to be is right between and right under. That's perfect. So yarn over, pull up a loop, and then we're going to go right back into that same spot, pull up a loop, yarn over, and pull through. So that is stitch single crochet 3 and 4, and we're going to continue along until we have 12 single crochets. Okay, so right now I have 10 single crochets, so I still have 11 and 12 to do. As you can see, my circle here in the center is opening up, so we can just give that tail a little tug, and that'll tighten it up. At any point, if you want to fasten that off now, you can. So you heard it just pull real tight, so give it a nice tight pull until you can't anymore. Sometimes you'll even hear it kind of do that extra locking into place. So I'll take a pause and show you how I fasten off. So never want to go counterclockwise because you can undo your magic ring. So we're going to go clockwise underneath these stitches, and I like to go all the way around till I get back to this beginning point. Might be overkill, it's just what I do. And it is going to feel real tight. Okay, so that's good, and then we can cut that, not have to worry about it anymore. And you can always just take your little needle and tuck that in. So for these last two, I wanted to pause and show you because it will look a little different, because what we're working into is the bridge that we created last round. So it's still the head of this stitch and the tail of this stitch, just looks a little bit different. So if you push out, you can see the two pieces of yarn right there that we're going to go between. Right there. So again, it looks a little bit different because this one's kind of going off to the side there, but that's exactly where we want to be poking out at. And one more. Now, where it might throw you off is when we count our stitches at the top, you're going to count 11 stitches. Even though we have 12, 2 in each, so 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, we only have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 showing there at the top. And the reason for that is, if you remember, when we create that bridge and that loop, that does count it as a stitch. So we just haven't created that 12th stitch, if that makes sense. So if you're counting and you're going, oh no, I'm short one, you're not. That's exactly where you need to be. So we should have 11 stitches at this point. So just like we did before, we're going to go under the last top V here. So we're not technically going into the first stitch because this is the first stitch. We're going into the second stitch here, right underneath. And we're going to take that loop and pull through. And again, this is kind of creating that 12th stitch. So if you go around and count now, including this, you'll have 12. So I give that a nice tight pull, and then I shorten that loop. Again, I want to avoid bulk. And then we're always going into the stitch that's following this little loop here, okay? So rather than backtracking and going in this stitch here that's behind it, we're going to go right in front here, right where the head and the tail meet. That V right there is exactly where we want to pop our hook through, okay? yarn over, pull up a loop, and then we're gonna hook on. Can be a little bit funky, and it doesn't matter if you hook it from this side or you go at it from this side. You just want to get your hook through that first one, yarn over, pull through both. Okay, so that is the first stitch of our third round. Okay, so this is how it's looking on the back, and this is how we're looking on the front. Okay, so for this next round, we're going to do a second stitch. So we're going to do increase, single crochet, increase, single crochet all the way around. And where it's important to, for stitch placement and increase placement, will be the fourth round. And we'll avoid kind of a hexagon shape that some people get with their crochet, and I'll show you how to do that. So for this one, we're just going to go right back into the base of this single crochet and do our increase. Okay, so we've got our increase here, and then we're just going to do a single crochet in this next one. Then we're going to go to the next stitch and do an increase, 2 single crochets. Then we're going to do just a regular single crochet following that. And then an increase. And we should end on just a single crochet since we started with an increase. So I will meet you at the end. Okay, so I just finished an increase. And so we started with an increase, we have an increase here, and I have 1 stitch left here. And we're going to do a single crochet right there, right in the center. And again, this one's a little bit funky because it's, you know, where we crossed over that bridge, so not necessarily, you know, a right or wrong where you're coming out of there. But you want to make sure it's nice and tall, same as the others. Okay, so this is what our circle is looking like right now. Typically we would have, well, we do have 18 stitches, but if we count the V's at the top, we should have 17. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. This is our 18th here. So we're gonna create our closure there. So hopefully this is what you're looking like so far. Nice flat base and a perfectly round circle. So again, we're going to go underneath this last top V here, or first I should say. Grab your loop, pull through, give it a nice tight pull, and then we tighten it up, tug, tighten, perfect. Okay. So now we want to go into this V right here, which is the one just after that loop. I yarn over, pull up a loop, go right in there to lock it, pull through both, okay? So again, this is our first single crochet of our 4th round. So in order to avoid kind of getting a hexagon as opposed to a circle, we never want to, from this round forward, we can't really avoid it in the ones before, but we never want to increase on an increase. So this round, our increases had to go on increases because round 2 was all increases. So now if you notice, we have a single, an increase, a single, an increase. You can kind of see the clusters here. So this is our single, this was our increase, our single, our increase. So we never want to increase on an increase. So if you notice, the very first single crochet of this round is on an increase. So we're not going to go back in and do an increase here. We're going to leave this as just one single crochet. And we're going to increase right here on the prior round's single. So we're good on this. We're going to increase next. Okay, and for each round as we grow, we're going to add an additional single crochet between our increases. So we had one single crochet increase, one single crochet increase. So now round 4, we're going to have 2 single crochets increase, 2 single crochets increase. So we have our 1 starting, which means we'll need to end with a single here, which will be perfect because we're landing on an increase from the row prior. So we've got single, increase. So now we're going to do single, single, increase. I hope I'm not overcomplicating the explanation. It's really no different than working with traditional yarn. I'm just explaining it because it took me a little while to learn that you shouldn't ever increase on a prior round's increase. That's what creates that sort of pointed corners instead of a nice round circle. So that was single, single. So now we're going to increase. And then we'll single, single, and I will meet you at the end. Okay, so now I have done my increase. So I did single, increase, single, single, increase, single, single, increase, single, single, all the way around. And because I need one more single to make this pattern complete, I've got 1 stitch left there, which is perfect. So we're going to go right there and get our final single put right there. Okay, so you can see we've got a nice round circle happening here with a nice flat base, very clean looking. And just like we did before, we're going to pull up a loop. Well, let's go ahead and count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. So we've got 23, and this is technically our 24th, which will be the bridge that we're creating here. So now we're going to go underneath that first V, pull our loop through, okay, and again, right where that loop is, that following V is where we're going to go in, grab our working yarn, pull up a loop, yarn over, lock it in place. All right. So this is the start of the 5th round here. I'm going to show you one more round, and then I'll show you how I close the round so that it's nice and seamless. And you can make this circle as big as you want. If you wanted to make this into a rug, you can do that. Just make sure you're following that pattern of adding additional single crochet between each increase, each round, and making sure that you are not increasing on the prior round's increase. Okay, so To follow the pattern, the last one had 2 singles. We'll now have 3 singles and then an increase. And because we're landing right on this prior round's increase, it might be a little bit easier to see it now. See, this little cluster is an increase, and then we've got a single and a single and an increase. So we're landing here on this first stitch on an increase. So we don't want to increase here, and we don't want to increase here. So this will be a single, and you can either choose to increase here or here. It doesn't matter. Just making sure that we're finishing the round on whichever one we go. So for an example, sorry, I think I hit my camera. For an example, I'm just going to do a single here, and then I'm going to go ahead and increase here. But our pattern is 3 singles and then an increase. So because I only have 2 before I increased, we know that we're going to be ending with that 3rd single. Now, if I had done my 3rd single here and then increased, I would be ending with an increase. Hopefully that makes sense. So I'm going to go ahead and follow the pattern all the way around. Now I'm going to do 3 singles. And an increase. I'll meet you back at the end. Okay, so I just did my 1, 2, 3 singles. Now I'm at my increase. And remember, because we only have 2 singles in the beginning, we've got that space for our last single crochet right there. There we go. Perfect. So this is how our circle is looking. Now, if in the end you have, you find that it's folding in on you, like, see, mine will fold in if I make it, but you should be able to give it a little pull, and it should lay nice and flat for you. If you find that it's giving you a hard time and it's wanting to fold, it may be that your stitches are too tight, and you might want to go back and kind of try it with a looser hand. I didn't say in the beginning, but I am using a 5.5mm hook, which is what I use with most of my t-shirt yarn projects. So I'm going to go ahead and show you how I close it off when I'm completely done. But again, you can carry this on for as many rounds as you'd like. So you don't need to leave a long tail, maybe 4 or 5 inches. So once we're done with that last stitch, we cut it and we pull this right through. We're going to take our needle and we're going to find that first stitch here, like we've been pulling it through as the loop. And what we're going to do is we're going to take our yarn and go right underneath that top V. And we're going to pull it from front to back. And then right where that yarn is coming out of, if you see the working yarn, see that stitch that it's coming out of? That's where we're going to take our needle and go right, I want to make sure it's showing in the camera, go right in, back in there and follow that down Doesn't matter where it pops out down here, just somewhere down here, and give that a pull. And you just want to straighten it up a little bit so that it kind of camouflages in there as a stitch. See that? So then we'll just take this and hide it under a few stitches. Doesn't take much because we're not going to be tugging on that at all. And you can cut it. Just sort of mask that. And then you look, if you look, just looks like all the rest of the stitches there. So this is how I make a perfect circle. And then from here you can do all kinds of stuff. So I'll show in the intro some of the things that I make with this. I want to show you, let me actually show you how I would continue on. So in fact, I'm going to use a different color. I've got my sky blue here. She's a bit of a hot mess, but so if I wanted to take this circle and I wanted to work it up into, I mean, it would be a big wine tote at this size, but if I wanted to work it up into a bucket purse or anything else, all that I would do is any one of these stitches here, I would take my hook and go underneath the, so with the clean side or the right side facing me, I would take my hook and go underneath that back loop and under that bump. That just kind of secures it really well there. And I'll take my yarn, same color, different color, doesn't matter. And I would start it right there. So that is the start of working around and up. So whether I'm doing my tulip stitch and I would want 2 stitches in one, right? Skip a stitch and go into the next. Again, we're working under that back bump or back loop and the bump inside there, right? And just work all the way around. And that starts working you vertically there. But that's for another tutorial. This is our perfect circle. I hope that helped. If you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment or reach out to me. All of my yarn is on my website, jmrlegacy.com. And see you on the next one.